concept, starting a new project or just doing whatever, I have to, well, I like to start with like really low res stuff. And I usually just take a sphere and then convert it to Dynamesh either in 32. Oh, okay, hold on. I usually just take a sphere and then convert it to Dynamesh. What is going on? Yeah. I just had the YouTube stream open for some reason. And I don't know if, anyways. So yeah, I usually like to start with like low res stuff. And in this case, just like Dynamesh, either 32 or 64. Because like when you're going to start doing creatures or like anything organic, basically not necessarily organic, like anything at all, when you're gonna start building something, a model or a creature or character, an animal, it's usually better to start from big shapes into smaller, like the hierarchy from the general stuff into the smaller stuff. So we're gonna start doing like primary shapes first and see what we got. Las botas tribaleras. Creo que me mutarían el video si hago eso, dude. Qué show. Saludines por allá. Okay. So why Dynamesh? Because I feel like Dynamesh is a really fast way of working, and because basically there's no topology restriction. If we take this sphere as it is and just like subdivide it or whatever, but let's subdivide this by a couple of levels. So if I sculpt here, it's all good, like I have enough resolution. There's like enough to work with and like get something decent. The problem is that it's because it's the geometry along the equator of the sphere, and we take into account the poles, this starts to become really problematic. For example, this is just like one example of this base mesh. And so when we start like smoothing stuff, we get this like weird pinch, and so it's like not really useful up to a certain point or like after a certain point. So why Dynamesh? Because you can do like stuff like this. For example, we have enough resolution that we don't need right now. And so if I just do like one Dynamesh pass, so I get like all these new geometry. I have some triangles, but doesn't matter because it's just for sculpting. And every time I do one change and the topology is stretching, I can just like remesh and have new stuff. Like we just control drag and I have new like basically updated and similar resolution across the whole model. Oli, ¿qué onda? ¿Qué show? Qu'est-ce qui se passe? And so, why Dynamesh as well? Because I've been using Dynamesh for like so many years now, and I like to keep things consistent in the sense of, especially when I'm concepting like primary shapes, primary forms, primary volumes. I like to keep a consistent level of resolution across the model because I feel like it's easier for me to figure out when I need to update like the level of geometry to add more details or stuff like that. And also because I can do like pretty cool adjustments on the fly with Sculptris Pro, and I don't have to worry about resolution in this case. So let's say I was doing like a dinosaur and I didn't want to, for any reason, let's say I didn't want to do another remesh, I can just take the Sculptris and start adding like the details there. Like just do a quick remesh in that area, for example. So that's another way. I sometimes use Sculptris Pro for like some tweaks or certain things, but for the most part, I like to keep with Dynamesh. And so I figured we should try and just like sculpt a creature for today. And I can maybe talk on what things I can, like I like to pay attention to and what things to consider, etc., etc. So yeah, maybe we should just start like pushing and pulling stuff. So when I'm first starting, I don't really like to restrict much in terms of like rules. I just like start with whatever, because you can always change stuff and readjust. Like I'm figuring out the head right now and trying to think of a cool shape that can be readable in silhouette, for example. And a cool thing of working like this really low resolution is that it forces you to think on the big shapes first, and instead of trying to focus on start adding details when you don't even have anything built yet, for example. Moi, ça va aussi, ça va bien. J'ai faim maintenant, donc peut-être que je mange quelque chose après le stream. So, we have this like bone, like cheekbones, for example, that I start to think about, like the eye sockets, for example, trying to figure out if the shape works, what type of creature, what type of creature will it be? Like a mammal, like a reptile, like a amphibian, like an alien type of thing. Who knows? So I'm trying not to be too restrictive right now, and like to just go very loose, because also like one thing is that in my opinion a model doesn't really start looking good until at least like 30 minutes of sculpting. So like the first few minutes are really painful sometimes, because you're struggling to like come up with something that looks interesting, and it's just like, oh man, you see something cool and you sort of want to like grab that and start detailing that, and it's not really a good idea so early. And I always like to have the eyes separate. I feel like it gives me more of like a better idea of how to sculpt around the eye socket, like the eye sphere eyeball. That was the word I was looking for. The eyeball. I mean, it's really loose. I don't really have like that much resolution. But in terms like this, for example, I can just do a remesh right now because there's no major features yet. Kind of looks like a crown. Another cool thing, something that I like to do like quite early in the process, is to just like press this button, backface masking, on the brush that I'm using, just to not be worried if in case I have like thin pieces of geometry, like in this case, if I just started like going crazy here and forget to turn that on, this is gonna happen. Hey Marco, ¿qué onda, dude? Que cuenta la vida. And so I like to press this button first to just like start building stuff without having to worry that, oh, like this part, whatever is gonna break. And we can remesh at any point. So it's quite easy to try new stuff and see if it sticks or if it works. And like we're starting to see something here. And so like for example, another thing I like to do when trying concepting like this, it's just that I try and be loose enough with the strokes. And so sometimes I'll be like, what is this, for example? Or like, what is this? And then I can like, I don't know, add more from happy accidents, I guess. That sometimes happen when one's sculpting, and just I like to let, in a way, the model like tell me what works and what doesn't. And sometimes I even scrap like whole projects and start over if I don't like the direction or so. Yeah, that's mostly how I do it when I'm trying to just like sketch something. ¿En qué andas chambeando, dude? So I'm gonna add the neck, but just for now, I'm not gonna merge it. I'm just gonna keep it as a separate subtool because just in case, I kind of wanna like play around with the back of the head or something. I don't know yet. It really depends, Arrow. There's not really like a precise formula where I can tell you like, oh, a head takes X amount of time. It really depends if it's like a stylized head, if it's a realistic head, if it's a creature, if it's a character. There's like tons of variables, but in general, like if you were to model like a generic human adult head that is somewhat realistic, I would say if you start from a sphere, like within 2 hours, you can have something pretty serviceable, pretty useful. If you have a base mesh, it's even easier, it's even faster sometimes. I would say iteration, I think. I would say iteration as a concept artist is the most important thing. Like the difference between a production artist and a concept artist is that usually in production you have way more time to work on an idea, to polish it, and usually you have like reference. But when you're a concept artist, what I've seen is like people want to see volume, not necessarily something super polished or like quality. I mean, it's more like based on the idea of what you're trying to. Yeah, I messed up the symmetry here. No big deal. It's most about the idea of what you're trying to communicate, and so it doesn't necessarily have to be like a super polished piece. And that's why I feel like iteration or like repetition is the best if you want to be a concept artist. So like if you want to be a creature concept artist, I would say study human anatomy, study animal anatomy, and do a ton of sculpting. just do a ton of sculpting. I feel like that's the only or like the best thing you could do right now, or what it would take, I guess. But it's gonna take time, because like there's points where you feel like you're really good, and then you do like a certain jump on your skills, so your skills surpass. There's even like a graph for that, but I don't remember like the concept. But like your skills surpass your ability to see, and so now you feel like you're crap. Or no, I mean that's the other way. Sorry, you feel like you're amazing, and then your ability to see gets better, and your skills get into a plateau for a while, and then you feel like you're super like shit, and then so it's a process, and I don't think you should aim for when you say somewhat successful artist, that's like a really subjective thing as well. So I would say just try and focus on doing what you like and be better than before, and like just do repetition, and I feel like that's going to take you to where you want to go. Yeah, like a year, it's depending on how much you've sculpted, it's enough time to already get decent, but um, yeah, it takes time. It takes a lot of time. Like the 10,000 hour rule, or the um, yeah, basically that rule I think has some truth to that. Still not sure what to do about the nose, but like I like that this guy looks like a fish somewhat, but like a reptile as well. I don't know. I mean, also I try not to get too concerned about that. It's just like a point of reference, but I like the idea of combining stuff and maybe creating something completely unique. Am I a very professional artist? That's a weird question. Um, because like professional means you get paid for that. And so in that case, I am. And so, yeah, I don't know how to answer that. Hello, Hassan. I feel like I can still keep working on 32 res. Um, there's still things that you can detail at this resolution. So even though I felt the urge just now to start subdividing this, there's still things that I can work on. So we'll keep adding stuff here. Okay, yeah, that's a better way to phrase the question, I guess. Um, in my experience, because everyone's mind is different, right? But in my experience, meaning in my case, I've never felt that I'm good enough um, in what I'm doing. Like I always feel like my work can be better, and whatever I'm doing, it's not good enough. But that's usually an incorrect statement or like measurement from my point of view. Usually like other people are not thinking that. And so in my case, I have to be like mindful of that and just, um, I mean, just keep doing things, but not get too worried about like if my stuff is good enough, because I'm in my experience, like personally, I never feel that it's good enough. I always, and I feel like this is uh, up to a certain point normal for everybody, but I'm seeing art on other platforms and I feel like, oh, that person did something really cool. So my work needs to reach that level, for example. So I'm always feeling like there's something to improve. And I guess it depends if you can like maybe sustain yourself economically doing uh, doing 3D or doing like whatever you want to do. I feel like that would be another way. Um, Whether it should be a small hobby or not, I guess it depends on you. Like there's some really cool life experience and I mean, how to phrase this? There's some really cool things that you learn when you work in this industry that I feel like you would miss if you would just stay as a hobbyist. But I understand why some people would like to be just a hobbyist because they don't want like end up hating whatever it is that they like doing if it becomes like their profession. Because I like to cook, for example. I loved cooking, and I feel like sometimes I have the urge like, oh, what if I had been like a chef or a cook or and like very quickly I think no, I would have ended up hating that. But it's not the case with 3D. Like with 3D, I can be a bit more resilient in that aspect. So I think it depends on if you actually can like do this stuff professionally, like for money, and yeah, I don't know. That answer is really different for everyone. So this is the reason I wanted to keep like the head separate for now because I feel like I need to do something to the back first. It's very like sad. There's nothing much going on here in the back. And right now I'm trying to just get an idea of like what design choices I liked and like to have them across the whole body and stuff like that. It's still like a very human neck, so we can make it a bit more animalistic. Usually animals have longer necks. Well, I'm not sure about that. Like some animals have longer necks than humans. Like most mammals, I would say. But I don't know. I feel like that might be incorrect, so ignore that. There's some animals that have like really long necks, and so usually are tilted forward. So let's move just this stuff around a little bit. And this as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I could help, like with the. I'm glad that my what I was trying to say got across, and I would say just like why not just try it? And I feel like the more I spend in this industry, the more I realize there's like very different markets for like a lot of stuff. So like there's children's market, there's like adult stuff, there's teenagers, there's gaming, there's mobile apps, there's animation, VFX, there's 3D printing, there's medical stuff. I mean, there's like a lot of possible niches that one could occupy. So I'll say, yeah, like go for it, man. Try it for a while and see if you like it. No, right now I'm just sculpting from imagination. I don't have any reference. And if I want to sculpt like a specific thing, I would put up some reference. Even like I even have PureRef opened here just in case I think of something like, oh, I wanted to see like a reference of this. I would just grab it. But for stuff like this, that it's just like a bust, I'm usually not using reference because I like to see what my mind comes up with first in terms of how I can combine the anatomy that like human anatomy and animal anatomy. I'm not an expert by any means on anatomy. Like there's always something else you can learn, but I feel like I know enough to just work on a face, like a generic face, alien, human, like even human. For a human, I might have to have actual reference to actually be more precise. But with an alien, with a creature, you can be a bit more, um, um, like lenient with that if you have enough confidence in your knowledge of the anatomy, I feel. So I might use reference later, but just for now, it's just like the idea phase, you know, like, well, let's see how that goes. My top ultimate tips for what? For ZBrush? And there's gonna be a point where the resolution in this sculpt is gonna be like, that's enough. And I turn on sculptures by accident. And we're gonna have to start adding more geo to this. So let's say we've reached a point, and I feel like we've reached a point where we can move on to adding more details. And so there's two ways, or like I don't know, there's many ways, but there's a couple of ways to that I sometimes do this. One way is just, well, I'm gonna cover 3 ways. The first way would be just upping the resolution on Dynamesh and doing a new remesh, and now we have more resolution. Why does it keep... Okay. And so in this case, we can work with more resolution now to do stuff. And we're still keeping just one level, right? That's the first way. The second way would be to just subdivide that. Like this is what I have, to just Control D and create a new subdivision level. And now in this case, I mean, I forgot, for example, that I had Sculptors Pro here, so let's just get rid of that. If I subdivide, so now I'm still on Dynamesh mode, but now I have like 4 times the resolution. If I want to remesh again, it's going to lose the new information, and it's going to do another remesh at 32, whatever that number means. I don't remember. And so you have to be very careful to not do that. Like if you're going for the subdivision one, you have to turn off Dynamesh, because it served its purpose, and now you're ready to just like keep sculpting with subdivisions, for example. And another way of doing it would be to turn on Sculptors Pro and start adding detail that way. For some reason, backface masking doesn't really play well with Sculptors, so we're gonna turn off for a moment. And in this case, you can start adding detail even without like subdividing stuff, right? But I don't like to add detail this way because it becomes very messy, and I use it like for specific areas, but not this way. So in my case, I'm just going to go with a new resolution, like just 64, and do a remesh and keep going. My tips for ZBrush, I would say, I don't know if there's 10, but like I can think of a few. When you're just starting ZBrush, don't change the interface at all, at least for the first few months. Learn where everything is on the default interface first, where everything is located, where everything lives, and then when you're comfortable with that, you can start moving things around to see what you like and what you don't like, and that's gonna actually speed up your workflow a lot. But in the beginning, I'd say just like learn ZBrush as it is, because I've seen like more than a few people struggle when trying ZBrush in a new computer that's not like theirs, because they have the specific configuration and they don't know how to use the default ZBrush. So that's a tip. Another one would be like get really familiar with the controls. A lot of people struggle in the beginning because ZBrush is so weird to navigate and to play around with, and the way the zoom works, for example, like it's already super baked into my brain, but in the beginning doesn't make any sense. And so just like get over that learning curve. I think like you should use ZBrush for like a couple of weeks every day to get that out of your system, because if you stop and then come back again before you're actually over that hump, it's gonna be really hard to pass it, because like you're gonna be going back to other software and then going back to ZBrush and seeing like, oh, it's nothing like other software, so what am I doing? And so just give it at least a good 2 weeks of everyday use to get over that, the interface and navigation thing. And another thing is, another cool tip is just press Control over any button on the interface, and there's usually a text explaining what the tool does. So if you're not sure, just play around. It's gonna tell you, for like I would say like 90% of the stuff, if you press Control, it's gonna give you like a small window of text explaining what the tool does, or like the button or something. And I guess a final one could be find your best way to work within ZBrush, because there's no correct workflow that I've seen. In other softwares, I could say no one really has a unique way of working things as unique as you have it in ZBrush. Like most people in other modeling software just like get faster, but the way to do things is pretty similar. And in ZBrush, there's like a ton of options for just for doing one thing. You have like 3 or 4 ways of doing that. And so I would say find the best workflow for you, and don't try and copy the way other people work. Just like focus on the way you approach the program, because I guarantee it has like the tools to do whatever you want to do. It's just some people prefer using base meshes. I don't. Some people prefer using C-spheres. Some people prefer to use Sculptris Pro. Some people prefer like scans and 3D scan data. I don't know. Like there's so many options to go by, I think. So yeah, those would be my tips for ZBrush, I feel. And thanks, Hasin. I feel like I'm going on a tangent a lot. But yeah, no, don't worry about the questions. I feel like sometimes it's pretty cool that you guys give me some topics to talk about, because it's interesting that maybe I hadn't think of those things, or it's good for a discussion or something, you know, so it's fine. Sometimes I retopologize manually, Brian, and sometimes I use remesh and project. It depends on what the topology that I want to be. If it's just retopologize something to keep sculpting it, I would use the remesh. And if it's something for production, either real time or pre-rendered, I would do it manually. So in this case, if this alien thing would be for like VFX, I would go and retopologize it manually. But if it's just going to be a concept and I just need topology for more resolution, like to keep sculpting it, I would just do remesh. Yeah, no problem. I feel like that's the easiest way to go by. I would say number 1 is sketching and ideation. I'm gonna write them down just so we know exactly how many steps. I would say sketching and getting the idea out. Like for example, this would be step number 1. We're at step number 1. Step number 2 would be sculpting. And you could either say like you can put that on the same hold on, let me see if I can share this on stream. Oh yeah, I can. Nice. Can I change the size of this? Yes. Okay, so just like for taking notes. Sketching and ideation would be number 1, and then sculpting, like finishing the sculpt. And maybe you can put here Polypaint, because some people like to paint at the same time they're sculpting. Some people don't even like to paint. Some people just like to do the color in Photoshop, for example, after rendering. I do like painting, so I would put it like as a 2.5 Polypaint. And then third would be lighting. To just get like the lighting and framing. So like setting up the camera, setting up the composition, like the silhouette, doing the lights, doing tests, seeing how the shadows are working, whatever. And then number 4 would be shaders. In this case, you can, like, if it's for a concept, but we're talking like a finished piece in this case. Actually, you didn't specify, I just assumed, so let's do both. Concept. So it's sketching, an idea, sculpting, then polypaint, lighting, framing, and then I would say shaders. Or passes. Because for, like in this case, you can do matcaps, textures in post, etc. Like materials and shaders don't really matter for concepting. They do if you want your concept to look more accurate, but I've seen like paint over just like a clay sculpt. So it really depends. Shaders, passes, and then I would say no, I mean shader, let's put here render, because that's another, I mean it's like maybe trivial, but it's important. And then just post-production. So like getting all the, because I put render here as a separate pass, because even though it's just like if you have the lighting, if you have the shaders, in theory you're already done with that, but the render takes time. And depending on whatever you're doing, like render takes time sometimes. So it's important to have this step as well. And then you can have like post-production or where you like take this into Nuke or Photoshop and like comp all the passes together, add some effects, do some paint overs, color correction, etc., etc. That would be for concept. And if we're talking production, yeah, renders do take time. If you're talking production, it would be number 1 and 2 would be the same. Just in this case, I would take out Polypaint, because after sculpting comes Retopo. This one's easier. It's more straightforward than concept. Concept is more like open-ended. Concept is more like a sandbox. Like it. In the end, what really matters is just the image that you turn on, that you finish. Doesn't really matter how you do it. Some people like to, for example, that I've seen like keyshot painters, like people who do like specific frames for a movie. Sometimes they even sketch the whole scenery in 3D and then do a basic render with lighting, and then they sketch over that and paint over that. So it really depends. I'm talking about like for creatures and characters. So after Retopo would be UVs, and then textures, surfacing. Number 6 would be materials, shaders. And this is for like VFX / anim production. Because if you're doing video games, there's another step. If we're talking games, there's another step. Before texturing, after doing the UVs, which is bakes. Yeah, this would be like 4.9 bakes. And I would say this is like the most basic way that I can like summarize the process. So let's actually change the steps, because baking also, depending on what you're doing, can take a lot of time and be super complicated. So let's say that this is, in my opinion, in my experience, the usual workflow for these three things. Being like a modeler sculptor for like concept, for VFX or animation, or for games. And obviously the way that you do UVs for VFX or animation would be very different from the way you would do UVs for games, as well as the retopo. That's a very different approach to what you need in terms of geometry, but the steps are pretty much the same. It's just that the way they work are like different. So if anyone wants to like just screenshot that or something, feel free. We can just put it on the side for now. And keep going. So I don't even know what this creature is supposed to be. But I feel like it's sort of you know what, I'm not even gonna say what I was gonna say, because I might be thinking things that nobody else is seeing, so I don't want to contaminate your like first impression with my thoughts. No worries. I hope it helps. And also, I don't know, I feel like I was thinking about why I like creatures so much the other day, and one conclusion that I noticed, or like one thing that I noticed, one conclusion I reached, was that creatures are really interesting because you can play around with like random shapes so much. Like for example, I don't even know what is this or what it's supposed to be, but I felt like it looks cool. It might be bone, it might be like a fin. I don't mind. I don't know. And so it's cool to just like have the freedom to play around with shapes and just experiment without having to worry too much if it makes sense or not, because if it's a creature, you can make it make sense. Hey Leonardo, I'm pretty sure it's possible, I just don't know how. But yeah, like actually all those filters are actually already like 3D models that someone modeled, rigged, and animated. or maybe not animated because it's supposed to follow your face, but yeah. The difference is the textures and surfacing are basically the maps, and those maps they have like all sorts of information about the surface of the model, and the shaders are the networks that connects those maps together. So it's like the next step. You can say it's the same thing. You can say like, oh, just texturing, and then it's basically building the textures and shaders, so it's like ready. Or like surfacing, for example. Surfacing, I think it's a better term to like encompass both texturing and shading. If you say like, oh, surfacing, most people understand what you mean. It's also really important to work in perspective. I was working without perspective, so things can sometimes look a bit distorted. Yeah, exactly. Like surfacing, I think it's a better term to use for the whole process. Like sometimes, sometimes people would say, "Oh, modeling," and then work in ZBrush all day sculpting something because it's the whole thing. It's sculpting, it's retopologizing, and it's moving vertices and extruding things. That all falls into modeling, for example. And then so surfacing would be both texturing and shading. But every place works different. So there's places where you only do the textures and the modelers do the UVs. And other places where the texture artist has to do the UVs first, and then also the bakes. There's some places where some people just do the shaders, and other places where people do the shaders and textures. ¿Qué ondita, bandita? Buenos días. Yeah, what Ellen said, basically. Yeah, I agree that it's complementary because the maps are gonna influence the way the shaders work. So I feel like the way I feel like in that case you should keep texturing and shading in the same category. Usually, yeah. If you like, how do I say this? Yeah, like it depends on the type of contract, but sometimes like people or like I mean studios shuffle people around positions when they don't have enough work. For example, they don't have enough work to give to all the people in texturing, so they'll ask like, oh, does someone know how to do like X, Y, or Z, and then they'll move you around to other departments. And but usually, like if your work is doing all those things, yeah, you in theory get paid more. But it's like sculpt, retopo, UV texturing usually happens more in video games. In VFX animation, it's more segmented. So you only do modeling, you only do texturing, you only do rigging, you only do whatever. But like for a full asset in video games, usually you work the whole thing. I'm trying out stuff here on the mouth, but I'm really not liking that much what I'm seeing. Yeah, like I have, you know how sometimes there's periods where you're like doing a lot of hands and then you're kind of stuck in the way you do hands. I have the same problem with noses right now. So let's try and change it up. So if you guys can see, I'm reaching a point of struggle with the definition in certain areas. So I need to like finish other parts so we can move on. Kind of wanna. No, I'm not gonna talk about my thought process in this case. I feel like sometimes that would I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything. Just gonna keep working. This thing? Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually constantly looking at like that area of the screen just to seeing like the overall shape. Sometimes I would just like do this. And like, oh, like just bring this like bigger and then just stare at it for a few seconds or a few minutes and just like, I like this, I don't like this. Like make the mental notes and then keep going. But in this case, like I'm really not thinking too much. I'm just going with the flow. Um, I don't know. I don't know how many are recommended. But I would say if you're just starting and just do like 2 hours a day, imagine you're going to like a sports class or like to the gym. If you go to the gym when you're just a beginner, would you do like 15 hours straight in the gym? Probably not. So I think it's the same when you're starting anything new. I feel like between 2 to 4 hours a day. I mean, if you have like a lot of free time and it's the only thing you're gonna do, just go crazy. But if you have other stuff to do, I would say just take a class of, oh, like right now it's my sculpting practice class or like my 3D modeling class, and then just take 2 hours to work on something. But if like even if you're a beginner, if you can start doing more hours than that, like go for it. That's only gonna be better. You're gonna get better faster if you do more hours. But don't overextend it, because I feel like this industry can be really tough as well sometimes. Especially when you have like really big projects, they can like drain all your energy. And I've seen a lot of people burn out so bad because like overextending. So I personally don't think it's like a good idea to spend like 13 hours a day for the whole year or something just modeling, because then like you're gonna only gonna last like another 2 years and then you're gonna be done. So I don't know. Just pace yourself. I won't use divide. No, not for this one. Well, maybe, I don't know. I'm just like sculpting stuff. I'm trying to design the character, and it's been a cool stream because like some questions, like this has become, I guess, like a beginner's class intro to creature concepting for production. I guess like that's in the title. I don't know. But I feel like it's been more like a demo than anything else, like answering questions and whatnot, and that's cool. I like uh, when people bring up things that I haven't thought of, and you get a good discussion. You know what? Actually, at this stage, let's actually subdivide. Um, Wait, no. We need first to merge the head and the neck. So I'm going to merge these two together and then do 64 remesh, wheel the polish on. This isn't what I wanted. Okay, actually, I'm gonna subdivide it so I can project it backwards again, because I don't know why the polish thing. Oh, it was project, not polish. That's why. You used to work 12 hours in a factory? Wow. I mean, respect. That's tough. That must have been tedious. I think you're gonna be fine. Okay, so now we have the merged thing. We can delete the other one. And now we can just subdivide this one. And now I think we can start maybe thinking about color already. So project, it's projecting the details from the selected mesh. No, project is projecting the details from the meshes that are visible into the selected mesh. So I had the copy of this thing turned on, and then the remeshed version, which was this one. So what project does is this. I'm gonna change the madcap. So it's basically just doing this. It's really subtle, but it's projecting back some of the detail that I have already sculpted. Like, that's really no big deal in this case. But when you're doing like see remesh and stuff like that, it's really good to get back into the shape that you had before. Hey, how's it going, Lori? Thank you. You too. And so, like I said, we can just like start subdividing this. I just did like a really simple subdivide and thinking about the color. So we're gonna go to skin shader and bring up the color palette. And let's think of a base for this thing. So I would like to go with a pinkish, like flesh tone. We just fill the whole thing and then like go completely opposite with the colors. And just grab like a blue. And then grab the paint brush, which I should actually add to my things here. And I like to paint with color spray, so the color isn't like super uniform. And right now I'm just like laying down the basic tones. I'm gonna do a lot of adjustment and detailing later. And then we can grab like from this color, just a darker version. And then just add some here. Start like you can sculpt just with the sculpture, and you can also sort of sculpt with color in a way when you bring up shapes more. You can redirect the gaze or like your eyes depending on how you color stuff as well. Yeah, Dynamite. I went to school I studied 3D animation and digital arts. I have a degree. Interesting designs remind me a little of one of mine, an earlier version. I want more ape-like. Nice. Yeah, cool. I like that. Yeah, sort of looks ape-ish, I guess. I always like when sculptors also cover painting. Thanks. I'm not a super good painter though, but I appreciate it. Like definitely, I mean, well, I don't know. I say that, but I'm pretty comfortable when it comes to like texturing. So I guess the thing is with Polypaint, you have to paint all on the same layer, and texturing you can do a lot more tricks. So that's why maybe I feel better when texturing. I don't know. But thank you. I'm still learning though, like a lot of stuff about color and color theory. And so I like to use this type of brush because it looks a bit more realistic if you don't use this type of stroke. You just do like the basic one. Things look pretty airbrushy. So like this same version, like let's say for example I'm gonna do like smooth, but I'm gonna turn off the Z add button, and I'm just gonna the RGB, so I'm gonna try and smooth the color. So like if I don't use that type of stroke and I only use the normal one, things sort of look more airbrushy, more cartoonish, which isn't bad. It's just like a choice in terms of how color works. I like things to look a bit more fleshy. And I can also like lower the RGB intensity here. No, in this case, I'm only using a single layer because I'm using Polypaint, and Polypaint doesn't really have that much flexibility. But if I was painting this in another, like a texturing program, yeah, I would be, like if it was for production, I would be like more careful with like subsurface scatter and masks for the hard parts and then the soft parts and then, uh, you know, like dust and the specular map, the cavity maps, like all that, you have like way more control on a texturing software than this. But this is like, I feel like that's not what ZBrush is trying to do. Like, I feel like ZBrush is trying to help you get the idea out, or like that's what it's best for in terms of concepting. And obviously, like you can go like super crazy with detail on the sculpt, and we can keep sculpting here. Like it's not that we are like forbidden to do that, but I didn't want to go into color until we had at least like something to work with, something more defined. Yeah, and the cool thing about sketching, using ZBrush in your workflow is that you can like iterate so much faster. And you can do like angles, and then let's say, okay, I didn't like this head. Make the mouth smaller, and then make these things bigger. Okay, so you can quickly do a mask. And then, okay, let's make the mouth smaller. And then let's make all this larger. And in 2D, you would have to resketch all that. So, yeah. So like, for example, that, right? I wanted to focus as much as possible on the main shapes, on the main character today. Like before starting with anything super detailed, I felt like it was better to try and get something done at the base level first, and then just go crazy with the detail. I'm glad. I'm happy about that. That's good news. And so little by little, you can start to add character and life, and you can like paint for a little bit, and then sculpt for a little bit, and then paint again, and then sculpt again, and so on. In this case, sometimes this happens. If you're using certain brushes, like for some reason also have color. So like in this case, for example, clay buildup doesn't have color. But if I use the snake hook, it has. So just turn off RGB. Actually, going to school doesn't mean that you have to be like self-taught up to a certain point. I feel like school only gives you so much, and after school is up to you to continue now being self-taught. Like you were taught by someone else first, and after school, it's not like after school your learning stops. It's actually like, have you guys played Breath of the Wild before? So in that game, you start off in a plateau, and you have to get out of the plateau. Like even the name is fitting. It's called a plateau, and most people don't realize that, but it's like the whole plateau section is the tutorial of how to play the rest of the game. And I feel like going to school is just that. It's just like a tutorial of how to play the rest of the game. It's only going to give you so much. And every artist in the industry that works at a high level is self-taught up to a certain point. In the sense that like you have to understand the areas you need to improve on, because no one else is going to move the pen for you. You can ask around and people will tell you different things of what you need to improve based on what they think your work needs, but everyone is going to tell you different things. You need to pay attention to your own things as well and learn to realize like, oh, okay, I need to work on this, I need to, you know. So you never actually stop being self-taught. It's not intrusive at all, don't worry. And yeah, well, the direction thing is another topic entirely. That can be quite difficult. Sometimes if you don't have the guidance of another person, can be quite difficult to know what the next step is. Yeah, feedback is really good because especially if you like ask the correct feedback and to the correct person at the moment, like by correct, that's very subjective. It means like whatever you need to improve on right now, look for someone that's better than you and ask for feedback, and then pay attention to what they say. And like feedback is also not like instructions. Not everything that they tell you you need to do exactly. But you need to be smart enough to understand when to follow the feedback and the advice and when not to. But having the feedback gives you a lot of knowledge about your own work, about your workflow and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, if you go to a school having very clear um, like objectives in mind, it can be like a super fast track and super shortcut. But in my experience, most people don't go to school like that because most people who start like a 3D program are still too young to know what they want to do exactly. So it's more like oh, I like animation, I'm gonna try this and blah blah blah. But if you go like with a purpose, it's much more um, valuable, I would say. No, I never feel ready. That's another thing that I had to get out of my system. I never feel ready for anything. I always whenever I'm posting something on social media, I feel like, oh, this is shit. This needs better, whatever, better lighting, better sculpting, better textures. And whenever I'm applying to some place, it's like, oh, I'm not good enough to work here. Like every single time. I feel like that's, um, in my case, it's more of a internal thing and not really a reflection on reality. So, but yeah, I don't think any artist, stops feelings like that. Like, I don't think there's a certain point where you feel like, oh, I've won the game of being an artist. I feel like even the most famous people in the industry or the most accomplished people in the industry, however you want to see that, I feel like they still have all these doubts and like insecurities, like even when applying to jobs, because you, in a sense, it's like you keep leveling up. So there's always going to be something that scares you in terms of level, in terms of what projects they do. So just suck it up, I guess. That's what I've had to do. ¿Qué onda, Sergio? Saludos. ¿Cómo andas? Yeah, art schools can be very stressful. Um, because sometimes you go into art school with an idea in mind, and then you learn so much about a new topic that you didn't even know existed. And sometimes you feel like, oh shit, now what? What do I do? Or that thing that you mentioned, making clones of themselves. It's having been a teacher, I can say that being a teacher is no easy task at all. But there's also people that shouldn't really be teaching, I feel. Like there's everything under the sun. There's a lot of really good industry professionals that for some reason or another aren't very good at teaching. And then there's the opposite. There's really good teachers in some schools that are so disconnected from the actual industry and don't really work there anymore that it's like it's useful knowledge but up to a certain point. So it's hard to find a place that has good teachers and that work in the industry and that know their stuff. So that's why you shouldn't really expect the school to bring you the jobs or like to make the work for you. At some point you have to grow past the school, I feel. Outgrow your school and keep going. Yeah, what Leonard said is so true. There's a really cool quote from the Creed film. Anybody watched that movie? It's so good. But like there's a training montage when Rocky takes, like, spoilers by the way, but I don't even feel like I should. Anyway, There's a cool montage where Rocky takes Adonis to the gym where he's gonna train with other trainers and other boxers and stuff like that. And it's a really cool training montage. And one thing Rocky says is like he keeps repeating one punch at a time, one step at a time, one round at a time. I think what he says. And that for some reason got stuck with me a lot. Um, because I think that applies to a lot of things. And so just like one day at a time would be the most basic one. Some days you feel like crap, and then others work out better. The key thing I think is trying to do at least something every day, and you're obviously going to do more sometimes and some days than others. But don't rely on motivation because it's going to fail you. I feel like we should put some color on the eyes. So I'm going to fill them with this. I'm going to take off the stroke, go back to the normal one because I wanna. I mean, this is just. It's so bad. It's just have something to fill up that space. We can substitute later for a better eye, I guess. Yeah. I just realized that I didn't detail at all this part. I'm gonna try not to go too crazy. Just enough so it doesn't look fake and plasticky. And if I want to reveal a bit of my thought process now that we're closer to finishing, or like I think we're like past time, I don't know. Oh no, we're still, never mind. So I want to reveal a bit of my thought process now, because I feel like that can also be a bit useful, some maybe. And so there's a few things here that I thought about while doing this character. Obviously, you can see the human influence in the eyes. I mean, they're like pretty human-like, even though the eyebrow ridge, it's like weird looking and facially, you can say it's like a humanoid. And that also helps because it has like, I would say all this part is intentionally ape-like. So like someone said, oh, it reminds me of an ape. I feel like that's the point, but I didn't want the nose to be super ape-like. I feel like I did enough to make it still retain that like quality without looking too ape-like. So like if we just create a polygroup of this part and mask it or like hide it, for example, I feel like if we look at it without the the mouth and nose area, it doesn't look that much ape anymore. And so that was one intentional element. And then there's also aquatic elements. That's true. Like I tried to make the lips reminisce like a fish, like to remind people of a fish, how they have the upper lip sometimes, the scales, and then obviously um, this structure, this like bony structure is pretty like oceanic influence, you could say, like corals or like another like other influences of how like sometimes shells have patterns in them, like stuff like that. And then when I was doing the head, I was thinking of this dinosaur that I don't remember its name, but it's the one that like headbutts, has like a huge, just like bald head that uses for smashing against other I forgot its name. And so it has like some horns and little like big scales around this area of the face. No, it's not the Stegosaurus. No, it's also not the bald Hediosaurus. Hold on, let me just look. What's the name of this dinosaur? So I just googled bald dino and it came up. It's Pachycephalosaurus. Yeah, I knew that as a kid and I forgot. Pachycephalosaurus. Also because I learned the name in Spanish and I feel like it's pretty much the same name. But yeah, so I was thinking of that dinosaur as well here. And also like these muscles are very human, like the trapezius and the sternocleidomastoideus, like the neck was very human. But then I stretch it more to be like more animal-like, like longer, and in the end it's still a humanoid creature, right? But I just wanted to like show you guys how um, knowing how to combine anatomy from different things can make you can help you do cool creatures. Because I feel like I don't I'm not even going to name any names because I'm not thinking of anyone in particular, like any artist in particular, but I don't like when I see creature designs that it's just basically a human body with an animal head. I feel like that's the laziest thing, and I've never liked that any, like every time I see a creature that is just that, like if it's a werewolf and it's just like a human body with a wolf head, it's like, that's just lazy. I've always thought that, and so whenever I try to make a creature, I try to do stuff like this, to take inspiration from different species, like comparative anatomy. Um, yeah, I guess like the Triceratops could be a good example of this type of thing, like a large head ridge in a way. I try to combine stuff from different species, from different animals, and also from like other stuff, like the ocean in this case. I don't know. I feel like I could show a bit of my thought process while sculpting sometimes and take a break from posing the other piece that I was working on. We can subdivide again and then go closer and start a bit with a finer detail in some areas. And then slowly we can bring more life into the sculpt. And then with more detail in the sculpt, we can start adding more detail to the Polypaint in different ways. Like I've shown this before, but with a simple mask by cavity, for example, you can do so much. And then just go and blur the mask a little bit and turn it off so I can see. I'm gonna grab like a neutral tone from here and then just go dark. And we'll slowly fill in some areas that might need some touch or two. Like, oh, I forgot. In this case, I was using the usual like airbrush, which I don't want to use. So I'm gonna change again to the brush that I was using. And I need to revert the masking. Yeah. And so it takes into account stuff that you've sculpted before. So like if we see the flat, all of this looks really flat. I'm not really considering like details at this point, like before, because that's how nature works as well. Like that's not every single aspect on your skin has to be represented on the color of the skin. Sometimes like surface detail and color don't match, and that's actually sometimes the correct way of doing stuff. But sometimes they do, so like you have to find like a good balance. And it can be useful to use the masking for stuff like this. Gives more body to the sculpt, gives it like depth. And then we can grab, I don't know, like a like this bluish thing, greenish. Do the same thing over here. And that's a really easy way of coming up with a quick concept, like something like this. You can do it like in like an hour, and then from there it's just like, oh, okay, I like this. Okay, let's detail it enough, and no, I don't like this. Let's change. Blah blah blah. Yeah, exactly. It isn't a linear process. There's no like steps that you can follow. Sometimes one step sidetracks you into another, and it's what you say about understanding your creative process. I think it's really interesting. It's really useful as well, but you have to be really honest because not everyone works the same, and when you understand your strengths and your weaknesses, you know like where to focus and where to put your attention to. Oh, I have the mask, that's why. I forgot because it was invisible. We can change the material of the eyes, so I'm gonna change it to the toy plastic thing, just to have the shininess, and then gonna go to plugin, subtool master. I'm going to fill only the material, only to the eyes, because it's the one that's visible. And so when I turn it on back again, everything has that material, but when I select flat color again, or like skin shader, you can see like only the eyes have the toy plastic now. It's not much, but it helps. So I realize I haven't saved. I'm just gonna save in case there's an accident. And then here we can okay, start painting a bit more detailed stuff. Like we can, for example, just grab like let's say with a mask. Let's just grab a mask and do this. Like for some reason I lost my sensitivity on my pen, so it's super strong, but let's try and do a mask like this. Like for example, this one is nice, and then that can help like to add like more variance to the character. Like let's say we grab this tone and then go quite low with the intensity because we don't really want to overdo it. Yeah, for some reason I lost the sensitivity here, so let's try and use another one. It sometimes happens when I save, I don't know why, but I lose the sensitivity on my brushes. Hold on. Hey, Iron Sonic, thank you. Gracias, Orlando. Sí, pues de hecho, muchos primates en general tienen como los ojos oscuros y es algo que he estado viendo por alguna razón. Se me ocurrió ponérselo ahorita. If you're not saved, then maybe the stream will suddenly turn off. No, it has happened before, but thankfully not. So I don't know why I'm painting on like 100%. But let's just lower it and go by hand. So like you can start to have some freckles because a lot of primates are very freckly, meaning they have a lot of freckles. Okay, maybe I went too far here, so we can dial it back. But stuff like this, you start adding more personality to the character, and then we can say like, oh, I'm gonna grab, I want to have like a dark skin tone, so maybe like this red, and then get rid of the mask and then just use this dark color in some areas of the model that you feel like need a bit more contrast. So like stuff like that, it's really a very dynamic process. I have no idea how it is to work on those industries, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty much the same. Like there's a lot of like in creative industries, it's usually a gamble, right? I'm not. I don't want to compare because I don't know, but it's a really dynamic industry. This one, at least that's what I mean. At least I can say that. And now the sensitivity is working. Okay. And same thing. And same thing. Maybe a bit more red-ish. And maybe I just want to give some more color to the nose. So I'm gonna do another mask by Cavity. And in this case, just gonna focus on the nose. It's always really important, like since this is a concept, I mean, it's like if we were texturing for video games, for example, all of these shadows and dark tones that I'm doing would probably go into the ambient occlusion map or something with the material. But instead I'm painting that. Usually like the color map, I mean, they can have these details, but like shadow under the nose and stuff like that, it's usually more a result of the materials, not the actual texture. But in this case, I just want something that looks good. So I'm trying to get there, like simply, right? If you actually, if we turn off the Polypaint and we look at the sculpt by itself, it's like, it's a really simple sculpt. It doesn't have a lot of detail pretty much. It's I would say it's still in like secondary shape stage. So the first part of the stream was the primary shape stage, and this is like the secondary shape stage. Say that 3 times quickly. And then the third stage, or like the tertiary detail, would be to start like going, oh, like going super into the detailing of everything. Maybe subdividing a bit more, maybe retopologizing, going with alphas, like skin folds, blah blah blah. But I mean, for this case, I didn't feel like we needed to go there, and I wanted to sculpt something that to just like create something from scratch for this stream. Something that could be like a character in a Star Wars or sci-fi movie or series or something. And then we can start thinking of, oh, what's this character like? But I hope you guys enjoyed the process, and I hope it was useful in a sense, in a way. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. We're finishing really soon. I don't know if anyone has any more comments or questions before the stream is over. I feel like I've been looking at this, trying to think of what more to put, but like at this point, I feel like it would just be adding detail, and that would be endless. I'm from Mexico City. I'm in Mexico City right now, but I move around. But yeah, originally I'm from Mexico City. Oh, nice. Así es. A ver si retomo después los streams en español. Estuve un tiempo haciéndolos también, pero los dejé. Estaría cool. It feels... It's something... It's kind of hard to explain because you know how the process is done, but in a way it stops being your work because you recognize the model. Well, at least that's what happened to me. I recognize the model and the stuff that I did, but then when you look at animated, it's like it's no longer yours. It's something else, and it's like sort of alive. It feels really cool. Like it feels really cool, not gonna lie. When you see your work in action, it's like nice. It was worth the pain. It was worth the whole process. Ah, gracias, dude. Pues no sé, supongo que practico nada más. Estuve viviendo en Canadá un rato. Yeah, thank you. No, thank you guys actually for making the stream entertaining and for asking questions. I feel like you guys are half the experience because a lot of the time people ask questions or make comments that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of, and so it brings a lot of cool discussion every single time. And so I'm really grateful for that. Thank you so much. And take care, guys. See you next time. I'll let you know on socials. Probably in 2 weeks I'll be streaming again. So yep, until next time. Bye-bye.